It's really fantastic to see. I mean, I've been discussing this improvement on how we do the business modeling with David and some other people on this call for quite some time. And we discussed it, and it goes a little bit back to what Shin was doing. What is the purpose? What is the meaning of all the activities we're doing? And I want to spend just maybe 10 minutes on decision making, on another aspect of what we are doing in financial planning. So my name is Tim Beringa. I'm running my own consulting companies here in Singapore. I'm a change management practitioner, and you see some other details about me. And I just want to put it a little bit from a different angle. So we've seen it from a finance angle, from a functional angle, and as I'm a change management practitioner, I would like to look at it from a more of a people angle, a human side of that, what we want to implement. I'm really happy how Shin was expressing what she said, yeah. And sometimes I see that we're just doing the forecasting, we're doing the business analysis just as a routine, as a habit, and we have long lost why we are actually doing that. And so this is that meaning on why are we doing that. And what I want to do as a first part of the presentation, I want to run through you with a short scenario, and I want to poke a little bit your feedback and input as well. So if you want to answer the question here, just give you a heads up. On the bottom right, you should have a small box which looks like a chat button. There you could type in answers to the question I will ask in a while. So just on the bottom right, there's this chat. So the scenario is, and it's a real scenario from I've been working on. It's a global B2B business. It's not a business to consumer business. They have 6 global manufacturing sites in Americas, Europe, Asia, across the globe. What is particular that they are not manufacturing for a region, they're more manufacturing the different specialties in a different factory, and they are manufacturing for a global, each factory actually distributes to global customers as well. So marketing came up with a new product, and now they're planning to allocate, the idea is to allocate that new product to be produced in Thailand. And the finance team has been asked to support that decision. So my question to you is, and I would love to see your answers in the chat as well, what are the required information points, and who provides these information points to make this decision? So just happy to see any type of ideas and inputs from your side, from the finance community here in APAC. I think that would be fantastic to see. So it's a global business, B2B. What would be inputs? And then just type in what comes up to your mind. Type in what you think are necessary information points to make that decision. So give you a moment to put your thoughts together and just type it in bottom right in the chat. Just see what you're thinking. We see a demand plan, and Rob, that's outsourcing might be an option. So what would be the information points to make that decision if we say, okay, yeah, maybe Thailand is not the right place to produce it, maybe we should outsource it. We need market research, and maybe also type quickly next to it who would provide that info, this information. How does it align with the overall strategy? And what of the strategy would be the information point? I wanted to go a little bit more concrete, specific as well. What would be concrete points in the strategy? Local wage costs, maybe that's then from human resources. Availability of skilled staff, that might be human resources and head of production. Can we sell the product? Sales, labor laws, the lawyers, legal and political consideration. I think that's a group of people. Protection of IP, taxes, that's finance, culture and political environment. I think there is a different group of people which is helping them. What training is needed for the staff, supply chain integration, risks, business continuity planning, I guess, for BCP. So I'm always a little bit curious. Sometimes I get the abbreviations wrong. So you see, thank you very much for your input. That's really what I wanted to trigger the thoughts a little bit when we're thinking of, okay, we are asked to do some financial analysis. How does that, what is the information you actually need? And what I observed and what has been discussed with David and Shin as well before is who is providing this information? And in a vast majority of information points, it's actually the business. It's not the finance team who has access to this information, who can provide this information. And then also, who is making typically decision? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in most cases, it's actually not the finance team who's making the decision. So it's again the business team who is taking the decision based on that data. But then again, if I look if I look at typical organizational structures, who is the best team? Who is the best person to orchestrate, to facilitate, to enable this entire process? And I would argue the finance team is in a very good position to orchestrate and align all these elements. And this leads me then a little bit to the next point, to the second point in my presentation. How does now that work together with the finance team and the business team, and how does that process look like? And we in the presentation before we say the finance team is stressed, I think Shin would love to have a job where she can check out at 6 o'clock. There is a big desire to actually have a little bit more of a work-life balance. Business leaders are often not satisfied, so they get the information from the finance team and then put it in their own Excel file and do more calculations, so that and many people don't really see the meaning anymore. So what is important here, and then that's what I often do as a change manager. Let's take a step back. Why are we actually doing financial planning? Why are we actually doing these activities? And in a very simple nutshell, on a very high level, we are doing it to make our business successful. Make our business successful in a long-term, lasting way. And in that context is then what we can do as a finance function is to enable better decision making. And that's why I choose to have the topic of decision making and share it with you as a teaser today. So what makes this successful? What makes that collaboration between business and finance team successful? And I would recommend 4 things here. And the first is to start with what are the decisions we actually need to do. And this is it's interesting. A few years back there was a big hype, and it's still ongoing. It's not a big hype anymore. Was that big data hype? And I was looking into it. I mean, from a change perspective, what can we do with big data? And it didn't take me very long of digging into the topic. It's all about making decisions. It's not about big data and the analysis of the big data. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing with the analysis we're having? And that's why I recommend, if you're looking at how to streamline the entire overview, let's start first with saying, what are the decisions we need to make? How do we decide that we want to have consultancy revenues, that we want to enter Korea? So these are these decisions we want to make. So what are these decisions? And then based on that, it should be a joint collaboration actually on how are we doing that, the reporting and the decision process, and mix that together with the business, with the finance team, and collaborate together and make a design on how this actually could look like for the organization, for the company we're working with. And based on that process, then it's I like to call it ownership. Responsibility, in my taste, is a little bit too weak. It should be ownership, who is doing what, and that in a context of strong relationships. So there's a balance, because we need to assign tasks. When we assign tasks too stringent, and we create silos, so that we say we want to assign tasks, we want to dedicate ownership, but based on strong relationships. And then in order to speed up everything, it's then also a thought and say, what can we delegate more to the front? The more decisions and data collection and collaboration is done on the front, the less bottlenecks we are creating, and that's something we should keep in mind, and that's where I see that we can collaborate, set it up more successfully. The last bit of my presentation is about that new finance team, and I think later in the panel we have Michael, and Michael and me have a lot of discussions around that topic as well. How could that new finance team look like? And I think Shin and David outlined very well on that. There's a lot of customer centricity, and in my line of work, I'm asking that question a lot. Who are we creating value for? And David already put a nice list of stakeholders into his slides, and it's like, there is not one person we're creating value for. There is multiple areas, multiple points, groups of people we're adding value for. And this gives us the guidance, this gives us the direction on where we want to go, what we want to do. And it might then also be that the new finance team has another strong pillar, which is more the aspect of facilitation and enabling. Not just doing everything, but more facilitating and coaching the people, helping the business to do their forecasting themselves, and with automation, make sure that the things which are not in the specialty of the business, that they can just grab it and have it available. And I think as a third element, there is a few functions within a typical organization which is able to connect the silos. But looking at, I mean, that might be human resources, might be IT. There are a few functions which are connecting silos. But I think, from my experience, that the finance team is actually the best in the position to make that glue between the silos, connecting these silos from a strong business perspective. So that's a little bit my vision, and maybe discuss later in the panel on how that could look like of this new finance team. A last bit on change management. How can we then create that transformation journey? And from a change management perspective, very often we want to look at what are the barriers, how can we go beyond what we already have, looking at the routines we already have and trying to establish new routines, new behaviors which are going in the right direction. And from my perspective, and I mentioned a few things on that, is the purpose. Why are we doing that? Let's create meaning for the activities in the finance team. Is that second step, is that what is the customer value? We mentioned that. We need to know what the businesses is looking for, what the investors are looking for, what regulators are looking for, and understand what they need. And then the third element is the how, and there it's from my experience, in order to speed things up, is that experimentation. Have that long-term vision, have the purpose in mind, but then doing the first steps right now and making small steps and adjusting these small steps along the way in that journey. I mean, and they all, as a foundation of all of these three things, is then good relationships. With good relationships, things just go smoother and go smoother, and then we can have a nice beer together, as David said that as well. So that's a little bit from my side. We are having, just want to quickly highlight as well, this is a workshop series. So we have 4 more workshops to go. In decision making on my side, we will look deeper into how to make fast decisions and solid decisions. And then in workshop number 5, we're looking at that we're not just installing change, installing the new finance team or installing the new way of forecasting, but also realizing this change, making sure that we're reaping the benefits out of that and not just putting a new software in front of people, for example, or new processes.